speak up louder. Now I'm echoing. Are you on, are you from Saucon Valley? Where you go? Moravian? No, do they have an environmental?
They do.
They do? Okay, good, because I think that's good to know, and if there's activities you're all involved in, it'd be good to understand.
Members of the audience sign in, just so I know. Thank you.
Thanks.
Bobby, you're a member of the audience. You're a member of the audience.
Yes, well.
You gotta sign in.
Okay.
Just makes it easier when I transcribe.
Bless you.
I don't think I'll be babbling tonight anyway. I had my fill of cops and stuff today already.
How'd it go?
Oh, hello, Drew.
Hey, Drew.
I had out with constable.
I know everybody's time's precious, so I'm sorry I'm running late.
Won't deliver subpoenas. I went out to his property. Got out of the truck. He opens his garage door in his pajamas. This is like 10:30. Says, who are you? He knows who I am. I walked up and figured out who I am. It's like, sorry, Frank. They got another subpoena for you. He says, oh, you got 5 seconds to get in your truck. You get off my property or I'm calling the cops.
We're
I
all
didn't make
set.
it back to the truck. He's calling the cops. I
Okay,
went down
good.
to
So we
Burby's
can
and I called. He
first
called.
call a meeting to order and start with roll call for you to pledge allegiance. So I'm Drew Germanowski. I'm here. Jennifer Helton.
Here.
Laura Ray. Does anyone know, will Laura make it or?
She did respond that she was coming.
Okay, maybe she's running late as well. Tom Carochi, do we know if we expect Tom?
I didn't get a response.
Okay. Ann Spurk,
She will not be coming.
Alan. Here. Cheyenne.
Here.
Here. Kathy McGovern. Janine not here. Chad Heimbecker. No. Russell Sutton. Russell's here. Winfield Clark. Carol Shine. That answers my question. Okay, did you get a rental or you had it? Yeah, I was.
Rick was, yeah.
I hadn't met you previously, so welcome to the EAC.
Yes.
Chad, see you. Okay, wonderful. I'm just trying to get everything updated here. So there was no executive.
Just want to remind you to put the mics on as you're talking.
Thank you.
And anybody in the, I believe that one is on, so you can turn it.
Okay,
I'll
yeah.
turn it for you.
Okay, so there's a green light on this. I assume there's a green light there.
I don't see any lights.
Okay, so one of the first orders of business that we...
It's up in the back. It's on. Oh, it's good. Talking. No, you don't have to touch the button.
Okay, so first order of business that we have on the agenda was to evaluate goals and projects for 2024. So Carol assembled this into a chart. When we brainstormed about this, people developed a lot of good ideas. And so then the one question becomes is we want to make sure we have an agenda that we try to follow by way of goals and projects. And so various people here, I'm sure, suggested various of these goals or objectives. So why don't we go through the list and try to get some sense of sort of the level of enthusiasm so that we can kind of not bite off too much and make sure that we have a realistic set of goals for the year.
May I make a suggestion
Sure.
that maybe, speaking to the microphone, that maybe we each look at 3 that we find most important and maybe table this
And
so that we don't go through every single one. And like you said, we're focused on what's more important over the upcoming year.
so you're saying each of us should rank 3 or list 3 and then
Yeah.
how that comes out?
Yeah, because we have a lot here.
Yeah,
And this could take quite a bit of time.
if we go through every single one, right?
Yeah, and that's why I was
That's
hoping
not a
maybe.
bad idea.
You have an idea.
I'll say. And I noticed there's a few of them that are like really actually redundant. They're almost the same thing. So I wanted to get a chance, but I didn't, to maybe consolidate. Like there's plant sale, and sell pollinator plants. So there's like 3 things that are the same. So maybe the list is a little bit smaller than it looks. Okay.
No, I was just gonna say, if, and another suggestion is each of us just say the 3 that we're interested in. Cause like, I know I've already started because we missed February and then we weren't able to get together in March, that's all. And it doesn't,
No, that's fine.
either way.
Yeah.
So is the suggestion that the most recent one, just go through individual ones and in essence, like vote on whether
No, I'm trying to be respectful of Jennifer's requests, and perhaps a suggestion is to go around and see which 3 you're interested in. Because like, I know I've started on one of them, so, you know, or at the end of the day, we're trying to save time. So whatever works easiest.
So you're suggesting go around the table and people list, I'm not hearing clear.
Correct. Like,
Okay.
you know, Kathy, which 3 do you want? Boom, boom, boom. Chad, which 3 do you want? Boom, boom, boom. Unless we're not ready, which is also possible.
Okay, right, I thought that's what Jennifer suggested too, so.
You're tabling to next.
Yours works. That's fine.
I think she just doesn't want to get into each one and all the idiosyncrasies of each and every one.
Okay, so maybe a ranking system would be good where we can eliminate some of these or
Sure.
at least focus on the top priority ones. But are we gonna vote on those now? Do we want to add up like a tally of which ones seem to be the most important?
Well, I mean, if we
top
just
3
went around and
items?
each person listed 3 things, we could check them off and then there's gonna be a process of elimination because some things aren't gonna resonate. But the question becomes, are we ready to do that? I mean, we have to review the list. I look at the list individually for a minute or 2. Why don't we start there? Just take a minute or 2. We can all sort of glance through the list and see what it is that resonates with us. And then we'll go around. I think that probably would be the sensible thing.
Two of these are C, correct? Designated in our agenda. Designate, adopt a road, contact, and set up spring and fall dates. That's right, right?
True.
Adopt the road.
Some of that would be on here.
think you're right. There are some things that are very similar, so
Yeah,
if,
like
when
the
you,
speakers.
when you list your three things and you see that 2 or 3 things should be lumped together, that'll be the most efficient way for us to do that lumping, I think.
What kind of fits in, there's like projects, there's like the waste stuff, water, and then there's like the cleanup stuff, you know what I mean? Like you can almost have like categories and then.
Right, and one thing to just, I think one thing we can address is almost a separate entity, which is the Adopt a Road cleanup. We've done that forever. So I don't think we have to list that as a priority for anyone because that's a given. So I don't mean to say waste our time discussing it. We'll just establish days. Are we ready to go? I'm gonna start with you, Kathy. I know that you've been
So,
thinking
yeah, well,
about it.
I reached out to 3 different representatives. There's 3 different House bills that were out there, 579, 783, and 1322. All of those House bills were presented, and I don't know what happened to them. I mean, they didn't make it, but I don't know.
What's it referencing?
One's bottle recycling, getting money back, the 5 cent for the bottles and aluminum cans, and one's on styrofoam containers. So I've started inquiring, where is this bill? What happened to this bill? Why wasn't it supported? And then get the information and bring the information back to this group of what can we revitalize one of these bills and get them back up, and get the committee. So that's one. The second one is the environmental justice one, because I made contacts with him last year. So my thought was have him come here and explain what environmental justice is and does our area qualify or not qualify. And then my third one, I kind of take whatever's left. Because those 2 I already started on.
What was the third one,
I
Kathy?
said whatever one I get stuck with left.
Oh.
It doesn't.
Okay. Chad, do you have?
I don't know if it's specific, but it's because there's a couple things here that seem like they go together for me. So 3 things that I feel interested in being involved with most would be some sort of recycling awareness, or the trash to art, that kind of thing, where you're taking garbage related and we're reducing consumption and we're finding alternate ways of helping our community get the recycling parts done instead of our trash all being commingled. The pollinators, species, and the bats. The fauna, native fauna, and then also the native flora with nature trails, informational sessions, hikes, and those kind of things. So you can put me down to help be involved with any of those 3 kind of categories. Okay?
Yeah.
However I can fit in. And that goes back to one of the items, I don't know if it's still on here, was to get the email set up so that we could start a Facebook page to get some information
Have
out.
that on the agenda, right?
Which, I don't want to derail the conversation, I'm sorry, but like, today I saw on one of the local Saucon Township groups was this Next Trex thing the school is doing, okay? Where they're taking the kind of plastics that are not being recycled currently. And so I'm strongly supportive of the kind of this thing. So I don't know if this is, it's already an ongoing program, but to be involved with this on some level. So I think this is a good tie-in with, it shows how I wouldn't have known that they were doing this without a Facebook post. So I think that amplifies that. So I don't know what we need to do to get that email done. I would hope that'd be something that we could just request and have done and not have it be voted on.
Information.
And, so.
Thought it was on our agenda.
I think that was on here at one point, and I don't know if I see
Yeah, I
it.
thought it was on the agenda as well, but
So,
we'll talk about it.
That's the other thing.
Okay.
All
And
right.
so is the idea there to have the township assemble an email list of residents? Is that?
Well, at least as a,
No, we were talking about doing social media.
Social
and in
media,
order to set
okay.
up a social media page, you have to have an email address that goes with it. So
Okay,
we were
okay.
thinking about having like some kind of email that was accessible to, you know what I mean, I don't know,
EAC
however it
at
works, and it's
Township,
not.
Lower Saucon
Just,
Township.
yeah,
Okay,
generic catch-all email address that could be used as a contact
For
point
the-
on
for
the
these
website,
members.
as also for administrative permissions
Okay.
to set up.
okay,
Just basically to let the public know what we have going as a group. You know,
Right.
it's one thing to have the website, but people have to take action, where like if you're sitting there just scrolling away, it might pop up and generate more use for the cause, I
Right.
think is the
But
goal.
there's an event going on this weekend.
Correct.
To get it out and start promoting that, like the cleanups that we're gonna do.
okay. And so, just to be clear, ultimately, basically, we're looking at an EAC-centric clearinghouse for this.
In a way, yes.
Yeah, okay. And, Harry, do you want to say, or I don't want to put you on the spot?
Sure, I have some ideas.
Okay,
So I
good.
think, like you said, the trash to art, because like a lot of the litter that is on the ground is not recyclable, and like it's just gonna be filling up the landfill anyways, which is a big point of contention that we've talked about here. So I think trash to art is something that is like important. It's something that's important because it like takes something that's like ugly and like unsightly, and it turns into something really nice that, you know, brightens up the community. And like he said, the social media I think is definitely a big deal, because I mean I'm a younger person, and at my school I play tennis. It's not like, it's certainly not one of the bigger sports at my school. We have basketball, soccer, all those that are really big, but we have a school tennis Instagram account for the tennis team, and like the person who runs it does a really good job. I think that brings that to the tennis team to like the forefront of like the sports teams at our school. So I think if you guys set up a social media account, it could definitely make a huge difference by like bringing it to like people's attention. That's all.
Okay, yeah. So I'm gonna refrain and go around the room and then, and go from there. Alan, do you have, some of these I think you recommended in the first place.
I mean, I would like to recommend having a drinking water and well water discussion among ourselves. In other words, bring in information and, you know, email to each other so that we all are on the same page, and then have a discussion about what we think about it. And the next thing would be invite Drew to talk about recharging water beds. And then the third one is, well, maybe we can get, I don't know how, host Penn State Extension to come out and speak on roadside dumps and water quality. Because roadside dumps put a lot of pollution into the water, into the groundwater. So those are my three things. They all have to do with water quality and learning about it.
Okay, and just to be clear, with respect to both the groundwater and surface, or I mean, groundwater, water quality discussion, and having me talk about groundwater recharge, you initially imagine that being something that we do here among this committee, rather than a public forum?
As far as, you know, me, as far as you giving a talk,
Yeah,
if you give it here, it goes out over the internet. So that's kind of like public.
okay,
And any discussions that we have here, I guess, go out on the internet too, so you know. And as far as the Penn State thing goes, I don't know, roadside dumps are important. I don't know who we could get to talk about that. And somebody put in here Penn State Extension.
They have a speaker series or there's somebody that talks about that, if you go on their, website.
Oh, okay.
so we could look into that, that's quite doable. Cheyenne, what are some of the three things that you're most interested in?
I would be most interested in working on the social media stuff, just to kind of bring light to some of the efforts, you know, that are being done. I'm also a geek, so I would be interested in reviewing the bylaws, taking a look at that stuff, just to make sure that, you know, the mission is aligned with what's in there. And also the collaboration with other EACs and municipalities. So I think there's a stronger point when people work together. Would probably be my top three that I would be most interested in. But and the others, I mean, the hikes and painting fire hydrants and stuff is kind of typically my wheelhouse.
Yeah, so in each case, we're sort of agreeing that we're willing to step up to do some of these things you basically just did. I had an inkling that Alan was gonna talk about the groundwater presentation and so forth, and so I'm all in, for that, so, yeah. Russ?
Yes, I'm into the groundwater as well, and also runoff, from runoff from, deforestation, because we've had an issue up where I live, they deforest, about 100 acres, and we have runoff from that, and I'm really concerned about that, and I also contacted the state about it, but it's a long procedure. I'm interested in turning trash into art. I saw yesterday, someone made a rake, used it along the ocean where the sand is, and collected all the metal and actually melted it down and formed trash cans out of it. And it was pretty interesting. He made a mold. I mean, he did it all by himself. I was impressed with it. But he recycled all this metal and made a circular trash can and put a spike in it so people would have trash cans to put stuff in. And I thought that was very interesting. And also, I'm interested in organizing a hike. A hike, for example, I'm part of Residents for Responsible Development. The 20th, we're having a hike on the DNL trail, 10 o'clock next Saturday. And it's a 3-mile hike. And it starts at the bed and breakfast there and goes down to DNL. And we have one of the people from the DNL actually giving a presentation about that whole area and also the Reddington area, because there's a lot of historical stuff there. So just wanted to let you be aware that that's going to happen next Saturday at 10 o'clock.
Okay. Okay, good. And are you also thinking then about leading another hike at some other
Yes.
point that we will discuss with us?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah,
Okay.
I'd be glad to do that.
Okay. Okay.
And so my focus, I want to review the bylaws, and I brought some stuff that I've already been doing the research on that, as well as reevaluate the open space. I think those are really key. And then back to, I think a lot of people indicated the recycle, better use of that. And so those are really my 3.
Okay. And we have an open space, on our agenda tonight too, to begin discussion on that.
Yeah, and if we have to look at the procedures, just to reevaluate, make sure we're in focus.
Okay. So then, why don't we try to have a little bit of thought directed at how we want to prioritize these things. Now, some of it really, I think, comes down to, we've identified things that some of us want to bring forward or sort of take a lead on. So the natural way of doing it is to have everyone just think for a moment about, okay, are they ready to go? I suspect social media would be something that you would be able to get started on.
Yeah, we can roll that out
Basically
quickly.
immediately.
Yeah.
So we would consider that to be a high priority, right? Something that you could start on immediately. I will just speak for myself and say, oh, that's missing. I can speak for myself and say, with respect to both, let's just lump it together under hydrology to talk about both groundwater recharge as well as surface water runoff issues and soil yield or soil erosion associated with the runoff. I could do that definitely at a June meeting. So if we want to think about that as a sort of a June priority, I think it's still high priority. I just don't want to commit to something, and I'm still on a meat grinder for another month. And then, but June, I definitely can have something together, not only just to talk about around the table, but I'll put some slides together and so forth and illustrate it. And hopefully June won't be too late for things that are going on around us. I think we'll be okay. So I think we could, I'm hoping, Carol, that you and I can communicate based on the minutes that you're taking to try to put dates and priorities on the list as we discuss them.
As long as I can hear it.
Yeah, okay. Did you catch all that? Okay. And so not to stifle your ideas, Laura, but I just want to get a few of these things that just seem obvious that we can move on. Kathy, in the same sense, I would think you're already starting to look into the legislative things.
My role would be to bring the information I find back to this committee.
Yeah, okay. And then likewise, Chad, I think with respect to the art and recycling and trash to art and so forth, when, I would say we can keep that as part of a discussion of when you would want to bring something forward, how we might try to establish a plan to do some of this. I don't know if we would incorporate, you expressed an interest as well, whether we could incorporate students in and do something, and it would take some organizing. So I think unless you want to jump up, I think if you think about it, and perhaps with the mindset that our next meeting, we can talk about ideas to do something formal. And then Laura, I'd like to give you an opportunity to discuss some items that you would like to see us move forward on.
Sure, well, we had already talked last year. It was like our number one thing we came up with was to rewrite our bylaws, so we definitely have to do that. So I don't really, it's not like a giant project, and it's stuff we can kind of work on via email. Yeah. So we don't have to sit and talk about it a lot, but once we have something drafted up, we can bring it in and see where we are. But we definitely want to look at that.
So
The
towards
Open
that end
Space
though,
Committee.
I mean, Jennifer expressed an interest, you expressed an interest, Cheyenne, you're interested as well. Does it make sense then for the three of you to be a subcommittee to work on this? Is that something you would want to do? Okay. So then I would basically say you can take the reins and start that process by communicating among the three of yourselves and finding common times. And I think you've already been thinking about it and may already have some information. So I see no reason why we shouldn't just have the three of you proceed on that.
Yep, and the Open Space Committee, obviously, and we did get that on here. I know we talked about that a couple months ago with Mark to move forward on getting that reorganized. The native plants, I know Parks and Rec is working on a native plant idea for the project for parks. So I'd like to tie in with them at some point. I don't know when we could do that, but I could see doing something with native plants and tie in with Parks and Recs and promoting that for everybody in our township. So those are probably the highest things.
So what I would suggest we do is I work immediately in the next week with Carol to then list what we've sort of discussed and with some general plan for starting date and who's involved, who's taking the lead. I'll let the three of you decide if one of you wants to sort of chair the subcommittee or take a lead, so to speak, a formal lead. And then I suggest we circulate this document via email amongst EAC members saying, here's what Carol took notes on from the stenography, as it were, the recording, and what I have notes on, and then just circulate it as a working document between now, certainly in the next meeting, so that we can, at the next meeting, formalize and say, yes, this is what we're going to do. And that also gives us an opportunity, and members who aren't here, to basically contribute as well with things that are missing that they find to be important. How does that sound? Okay.
And definitely we can just keep all our other ideas on a list.
Yeah.
If I may, I was gonna make my number 3 then, I'm gonna find information about hosting a large appliance day and hosting a tire deposit day. I think every township needs those, but I imagine you're gonna have to contract with a company and we're gonna have to pay them, I'm assuming.
They're not cheap anymore.
And they're not cheap, so I mean, I'm willing to do the groundwork of finding the why, what, where. But then it has to be.
RSS, check them out, that's who I used to do when I did it. And
RSS. But then I would have to come back to this committee to tell you how much it's gonna cost.
Right.
And then it says, and invite other townships, well, I don't know.
So I've been working on it. I reached out to individual that's on the Bethlehem EAC as well as Springtown. And in one of our notes, I think the last month, or 2 months ago, we talked about the tire program that we did at one point with Springtown. And so I can reach out to her. So,
Then we'll just connect.
yeah.
And so I feel like some of that is where we're all talking about the same categories. The same category.
We should bring our own microphones.
Like where it's the tires, or it's batteries, or it's household waste, all of these fall under a recycling group, right? And so I don't want to lose some of these individual items, right? The electronics as well.
And there's really like 6 categories here. There's projects, waste, discussion series, water quality, committees, and plant sales. You know, that these generally, and then the,
Legal.
thank you. And then, you know what I mean, so that they do fall under categories. You know, that way when you identify who's interested in what, like she said, there's plant sales on here twice.
Yeah.
But it's, I mean, you can easily like roll through here and say, okay, this is sales, this is, you know, waste management, company, you know what I mean?
So this is a spreadsheet we can edit, and we're gonna put in.
Well, I think what we can do is, myself working with Carol, make the first cut of grouping some of these things together.
Putting
that
which
fit
names
together,
next to
yes.
what.
And
then
make
we
it,
can-
sort of make this is a blank copy with ideas, into a draft copy of who's interested in working on some of these things. So the next agenda item says set committees and project dates. That would be challenging to do just based on this conversation, everybody saying, you know, raising their hand. So I think probably the most efficient way of doing it is for myself working with Carol to combine things, and I have a list of who's expressed interest in various things, and maybe some possible starting dates, with the exception of looking at bylaws as something that you can start on right away, and of course, social media. So Cheyenne, you're the one that's beginning out of the box here with heavy lifting right away. Yeah.
I just
So-
need the address, that's all,
Yeah,
access
so,
to it.
And hopefully, what we'll do is be diligent with this document over the next week or two, so that you can have feedback and say, oh, I think you have this wrong, or we're missing something. And then try to, by our next meeting, have everything lined up along these lines, as far as who's interested, what we're doing, what the priorities are. And that's where I think it'll be easier to make adjustments to priorities and start dates and so forth, once we have this boiled down into a list that is lumping natural groupings together.
So Carol, I asked this question before, but is there a way to share this, to have a shared edible spreadsheet in the cloud? You all have.
We can't give access to everybody, so it has to be one person.
Okay. Even view?
So we couldn't do it on,
Everybody can view it, but only one person.
Can
one other
edit.
person would be able to edit.
Why can't we
but
put
we
it in a spreadsheet?
do this on a Google Docs?
That's what I asked the last time, and then,
It's our security,
yeah,
and, you know, we were hacked a couple years ago, so there are things in place.
no, and I agree, that's
But if I did
absolutely
a Google
important.
Doc and shared with each of you via our emails and made shareable, then we would be able to edit it.
There's something in here
And then we wouldn't need the township, we wouldn't have to worry about the township getting,
Yeah,
you know,
that makes sense.
anyone getting into a private server.
Yeah,
There's
Right.
nothing.
Okay, that's the way I'll do it. I'll try to organize this in the first place based on our conversation, and then just share a Google Doc with everybody.
Need help, let me know.
Okay,
We
wonderful.
could probably, should be able to copy and paste this out.
Yeah, exactly.
That gives us better accessibility to communicate with it.
Yeah,
and I think with Cheyenne's point with having the categories, you can sort, you can, you know, we won't get rid of any ideas. It may just not have a priority this year. It could be something that can be revisited, so I like the
well, given that
breakdown.
everyone spoke to one of these issues in the previous meetings, we won't eliminate anything, just move things down the list. And then that's another opportunity for us to discuss and reorganize things that way.
My problem is I wanna add more stuff to it.
That's good.
We
Do.
didn't get to talk since we had that, online conference session. We
Yes.
haven't had to,
That
and all
was
the ideas, I
really
sat
good.
in on that on a Saturday.
Yeah.
And I don't know if I'm allowed to, but there was issues there about light pollution,
Yeah.
which is not represented on here at all, and we have all of these lovely warehouses coming up with their
Right.
lights on all the
I
time.
thought the same thing.
And then homesteading subsidies for home farm. And to be able to get, so that would be good information to distribute to the community as well, for people to apply for
Especially with the open
state
space.
benefits.
Yes.
So those are two issues that weren't loaded on here that maybe we can add as something down the road. But personally, I think we need to get a calendar
Right.
together of these community events, all of these different recycling things. We could do one a month or one every other month.
One every quarter, maybe.
Quarter or
Quarter is
something.
probably a
Yeah.
good way to.
With respect to though, that visual conference, we have that down here under updates, reports, EAC
we missed that.
network, visual conference notes, so that's where I think we have a natural opportunity to talk about it.
Okay.
Get a report back, because I know I didn't participate. So we'll get to that a little
It was
bit
awesome.
further down the line, all right?
All right.
Good. So what that would bring us to is item C under new business, the adopt a road contact and try to set spring and fall dates if we can. Given that the committee has basically changed membership, you know, we almost have to reestablish who's gonna take the lead on the adopt a road. So
I don't mind to do it, I have another road that I do.
Of course, I have to make it be difficult, that's, you know. I had people reach out to me personally, I don't know how they got my email, but they are from Whiting Turner, which is the Lehigh Valley, where the Bethlehem Steel used to be, the industrial park, Lehigh Valley Industrial Park. So they asked me if they could help do a cleanup in either Hellertown or Bethlehem, and they have 25 people that are willing to help, but I didn't know what to say. I didn't know how to respond back to them, so I haven't responded back to them yet.
right, and I don't know how to respond back initially either. One of the interesting things is trying to to wrap our arms around what we can do, given that we're not township, although we're volunteers. So in other words, what they were requesting is an opportunity to do a cleanup somewhere, it sounds like.
Correct, and they wanted to, you know, join with us. They gave me dates, April 18th, 19th, and the 22nd, which happened to be weeknights. So I didn't do anything, I just said, thank you so very much, I'll get back to you, like, I didn't know what to say. I don't know how they got me, but they got me.
Township still has a list of roads, correct, Carol?
We don't have any available.
All the roads
Well,
are.
we can add to them, correct? Because my road wasn't on it. I selected a different road and Roger made me take.
I asked
the road I
Roger,
have.
somebody approached me about a road, a couple months ago, and he said we didn't have any roads available. So adding them is a little
Make
bit
it like a
hard.
one and done thing.
Right now.
That's why I was looking at Easton Road
Pick a
again.
crappy
Yeah.
road
'Cause
and
That
just
is,
do
you
it,
mean
and it's not a
designating
regular
new road
yearly.
as a possible,
Easton Road's
Yeah.
gross.
that you could,
Easton
that
Road is
the
a state
section
road.
like a mile long or so, half a
Well,
mile.
there's a group that has Easton Road already. I think the Wasser guys that push
They
them.
don't
have
use,
Easton?
yeah, they don't.
Only a little
Well,
piece, but
Well,
yeah,
aren't they,
they're old.
isn't the,
They're,
They're old, I don't think they do.
where all those warehouses are?
That's Bethlehem.
That's Bethlehem, so why don't they go clean some roads in Bethlehem? Yeah, Majestic Park. Yeah, why don't they go clean roads in Bethlehem?
Well, I think it's still nice if, I mean, because
They
I think
asked.
it's nice, yeah, I think it's nice that they're being considerate of the neighbors. I mean.
that's how I sort of took it.
Yeah.
This group is not the same, people that are in, this is Lehigh Valley Industrial Park, I forget now, 3 or 2 or something, and ours is like 4 or 5, so, but they're, you know, they're sisters, so to speak, so.
Yeah, I wonder if if the simple thing is to say, why don't you contact does Bethlehem have an EAC, does anyone know? Yeah,
They do.
Anyway, I think they do.
so I wonder if say, contact Bethlehem EAC and focus on Easton Road. It's not in our township and our purview to do that, but,
Half
There's-
the side is our side.
Yeah, I don't know how you
Why would
win
we
that.
go somewhere else?
Yeah, I wouldn't.
But
That'd be a good place to do it.
So what needs to happen for us to be able to designate another section of road, like anywhere in the township?
don't
It
as
has
a
to be
adopt?
township or state, and then we have township roads.
I have a question. At what point do we blur the lines between, like, EAC wanting to make a recommendation to council to reevaluate what the roads are? Is that something that can happen? It might be a really ignorant question, I don't know. I'll ask it.
Well, that's an interesting question. So what you were suggesting, Carol, I'd never heard this, that all of the roads in the township have people designated as cleanup volunteers.
All the roads that were in the, all the roads that are in the agreement have somebody that handles taking over the cleanup. When I talked to Roger a few months ago about adding additional roads, because we have more roads than what we have listed, he said that we couldn't do that. So for whatever reason, I don't remember, but if it's liability with where they're at, I don't know what the reason being. I definitely missed it.
Can we visit that to ask what the holdback would be, and also for a list of what the roads are that are currently, like, I know when I was cleaning up Lower Saucon Road, a neighbor from Crestline came up and told me there was garbage up there, and he's like, it's dirt, and I was like, it's not my road. I mean, at the end of the day, like, you know, but if there's others that we can add,
Council liaison can take that to council.
that's why I'm looking at Laura, I'm like, I don't know where that line gets blurred, so I'm putting you guys on the spot.
Can we get a list like you're asking of?
Yeah, the list is actually out there somewhere. I know I've
Okay.
seen it, of what our adopt a road
They're on
roads
the
are.
website.
Yeah, they're out there,
It's on the site.
but they're all taken.
Yeah, they're taken, but are they being
Managed.
managed? And if not, because I know Flint Hill is one, not Flint Hill.
Flint
Walter-
Hill.
What's the, Waldheimer,
Waldheim, but
and that's never picked up, and now it's not easy, but
Right.
can we get a tally to say, okay, you're adopted spot, but you're not picking up, so maybe we can.
They may be adopted, but they might not be actively picking up.
Right.
Well, they would know, because you schedule it with them.
That's why I'm looking at portion.
I know.
I have a list of people. I have one in particular group that has not gone out yet and has not responded to my emails as of yet. So as far as everybody else, I have all other groups with the exception of maybe 2 that are listed. So, I mean, you know, I have to give them the benefit of a doubt to get back to me and, you know.
So what I would suggest is that I request from you the list that presumably is out there somewhere. You have a list then of who, if you could share that, but what I'm suggesting then as well is, again, this is something I think we could add to our to-do list and look at that list and see who's the volunteers are and try to, I guess in your records, you would have a record of when anybody cleaned their roads because they had to sign up to get the materials. So if you could also look at your records to see which of these sections of roads have indeed been cleaned up in the last 2 years would be maybe reasonable. That should be 4 cleanings, right, of spring and a fall.
Last year, I can tell you off the top of my head, there was one road that was not cleaned, one group that did not go out.
Okay, so just one
And
group.
I'm a pest.
Okay.
So-
Okay, so I think that's something we could put on our schedule to accomplish, to get a better grip around this, on this and see which roads are not part of the scheduled cleanup. And then, I guess, I didn't realize this till you're saying the complication is that Easton Road is one side of the road, Lower Saucon's property, and then Bethlehem's towards the warehouses. So
Yeah,
that's
that's
actually
state
about.
road.
That's only
State
between,
road.
that's only
It's a state
between
road.
the east branch of the Saucon Creek and
State doesn't
Bethel
clean
and
it up.
Hellertown.
Right, okay,
After you
That
cross
is
the
dirty,
Saucon
so.
Creek, it's all out of LST.
okay.
Keaton's
Okay.
beautiful.
Well, I would like to know how we can add
In the
sections of
UCDs.
roadway as well. If
How
we
about
have,
we
if we
help
have
the road,
the
then?
community here, you know, that wants to be
No, I mean,
involved.
that's where
and we're gonna
getting the
turn them
list
away
of-
Because we don't have a designation on something, I'd like to get that
Yeah.
changed.
No, but a starting point would be to see what roads we do have.
True.
And have assigned, and then by default, we would know which roads are not, and then I think it's something we could recommend to council to get an understanding of how these designations occurred in the first place, and how easy or difficult, or what steps we need to take in order to add roads to the road cleanup list.
Now, is this limited to just roadways? What about waterways?
Well, I don't know of anybody who does that.
Top to creek.
In other words, adopt a creek. I mean, I could tell you informally, at Lafayette College, we do, Earth Week cleanups on the Bushkill Creek, but it's not part of any formal program other than just a few people getting together, organizing, getting the volunteer student groups, making sure plant operations is going to pick up the material that gets collected. That's where it gets to be challenging to do something like waterways. I'm sure the township has never done that, and that would be another conversation.
Another group I was with did it in Allentown, the city of Allentown, and DCNR or whatever. It said,
Yeah.
here's some sections, there were some canals areas
Right.
along the Lehigh River that we cleaned out, and some other, small tributaries. So that's another option within here that doesn't have to be limited to just roadways.
Right, so I think we'll lump that all together then with the road and creek cleanup.
I just pulled the list from the website and emailed it. I replied to Carol's email that had 12 of us on it. That's everybody's in it, right?
Probably.
So everybody has it just for efficiency.
Okay, yeah.
Said it was their 2023
So along the same line, this just joggled my memory. So Parks and Rec last night, they talked about, they would like to maybe discuss doing adopt a trail section type of thing. It's not necessarily litter, although I guess there is some litter, but more for brush and debris removal, especially after the storms, to kind of push it aside and clear the trail. So that was something they asked me to discuss here
And what group
discuss
is that?
the Parks and Rec.
Parks and Rec.
Yeah.
Okay.
So
Is
the
the
rail
rail
trail's
trail
kind of
in-
like in between. They have
Rail trail in Hellertown or LS2?
in Lower Saucon, yeah,
Both.
the Lower Saucon Rail Trail.
Goes through both.
I mean, parts are in Lower Saucon and parts are in Hellertown.
Yeah, but we would be setting something up for our township.
So,
There is a rail trail committee,
Yeah, there is, but they don't have anything like that to, like I said, maybe you could do an adopt a trail section.
so what I think one way to move forward is, again, is when I put this list together where we have people that have, as already occurred here, and I indicate that they want to take the lead or step up, we'll have a column for people to fill in the blank, if anybody wants to take a lead and organize a subgroup to focus on that. I think that's one way to move forward because we will have a big list. So I'll do my best to make the first cut on organizing a spreadsheet and share it, and then we can add and discuss.
And I know that Saucon High School did part of the creek because my nephews were involved with it. And that was many years ago, but I don't know if they're continuing to do that.
Right. Yeah, usually I think when the school does stuff of that sort, they made the arrangements maybe through their custodial force or something to then, because it's one thing to collect material, but you bring it together somewhere and then it has to be disposed of. And creeks seem sometimes to be worse than roads in terms of the size of it's junk, a lot of times it's big pieces of metal and so forth that comes out. Certainly tires. So, okay, I'll try to get that together. In the meanwhile, one of the things that's a little more pressing too is for us to set the spring and fall road cleanup dates and I don't know who, that's usually my experience on this committee is I've cleaned up our road section, I think, twice. Usually I have conflicts on Saturday morning. So does anybody want to sort of step forward and do the material pickup and organize?
Can we do a doodle poll or something to figure out everybody's availability?
Well, the problem is right now, Reading is not available. That road is closed to putting in piping, so I would not suggest that we do it in April, and I don't know when it's gonna be done. Do you, Carol?
Probably by June.
Yeah, so we would have to pick it up in June.
Okay.
So the road's actually closed?
Yeah.
Okay.
I'd
Okay.
be happy to kind of take like I said, I have another road, so I can coordinate the two, and it's easy to throw the stuff in my truck. I mean, did you coordinate it last time? I don't want to step on your toes.
No, it's fine, yeah.
Work with whatever everybody's schedule is, you would just, as
Okay.
far as like picking the stuff up, I can, like I said, hit both my road and that one at the same time.
So probably the best thing to do then is put it on the agenda again next month see what the status is of Reading Road. I didn't even realize it's closed. And then organize a date from there. Okay, the steering committee update on Cooks Creek watershed. I don't know what that update is. Can anyone speak to that?
Oops. I introduced it in, Cooks Creek is doing their 50-year anniversary, and they asked if we, as an EAC, wanted to participate, and everyone agreed. And so really, it's a free event down in Silver Creek Park in Springtown. And we'll need to come up with like a table and some, literature that we want to do. And if necessary, I'm with the, Saucon Creek Watershed as well. And we were going to work with Penn Extension and bring in some of they have games that are, watershed type related. So we can always kind of piggyback together, because I know we may not have a lot currently. So,
Okay.
and so what I would do is probably, sorry, it's vibrating.
What is the date of that, Jennifer?
It is July, hold on, I'm sorry, I don't know it off the top of my head, I should. I'll get it to you all, my apologies. So really, and it's July, it's on a Saturday, it's from like 10 to, I think, 3. They'll have music, they have some lectures going on, so it's a pretty nice event, and so I'll get the date and we can add it.
Yeah, so maybe once again, we can put that for a follow-up on the May meeting.
Yeah,
to
and
give
we'll
us
need
the
to maybe get a
particulars.
sign-up sheet just to people who would like to volunteer, even if it's just an hour or two. And, obviously we want to represent the EAC, and, we can talk about the litter pickup, some of our other projects that we currently do. We can do the open space and start,
Right.
making that known. So really, we could have a separate table, but just wanted to make sure if we weren't getting this ideas generated that would be a good table, you could work with the Saucon Creek.
Okay. All right, so Carol would ask to put that on the agenda as a follow-up in our May meeting, and everyone can think about, in and of itself, the open space accomplishments would be good to share with people, for example, so that's a great idea. And
Yeah.
clean up and, the recycling events we've already hosted, which they've been more than successful in terms of
Thank you.
the interest from the public, that's for sure. Okay, and then the Bethlehem landfill spring and fall cleanup dates. So those are listed in the memo in our file.
And can I just add something that just popped in my head about that, if we could back up real briefly? Back with the trash, I sent you all a link to the little litter trash program. Even if we kind of ask people to bring their trash so you can fill out the letters, you all can look at it when we bring it back up next month. Maybe something that would be kind of meet both the need and the fun. Just a thought, but I sent the link.
Okay, so at the landfill, that's an established cleanup, as I understand it. So that's almost a
They
point of
never really
information.
had it, and I brought it up at council the one night because they have it in the host agreement for this free drop-off, spring and fall, never had any dates. I'm not sure
Yeah,
who's picking the dates here.
I couldn't find any reference that it had ever happened before,
Yeah, I
and that
don't
was
think
my
it
one
has.
question.
The weather is a problem because to get access up there, if you have bad weather, you got a problem, unless you have four-wheel drive.
Yeah, I'm not sure.
Do you have to take your stuff up there?
Where you have to go once you get in there.
Oh.
You have to go up, if I had four-wheel drive.
And physically throw your bags in or whatever.
Dates here, she would like 2 dates picked, that's what she's looking for.
But is she looking for our involvement?
In the dates, yes.
Picking the
Just
dates,
picking the
I
dates.
guess.
Just picking the
Oh.
dates or volunteering?
Nope,
I don't think there's any volunteer to do. People have to, it'll be for people themselves to take it there. We're not doing.
But as it looks, you would pick up a ticket here and then show your ID, and they're basically gonna
I
accept
don't know.
the trash. Is that the idea?
We have no involvement in it.
Okay,
I know.
Only issued to township residents.
okay.
The 25th is Memorial Weekend, which is,
No, people will be
Idiotic.
gearing up to get ready for their own Memorial Day weekend plans,
Yeah.
so.
Say, out of the two, June
first,
First
I
would
thought
be a
that was a
better one.
no-brainer on that. That's probably why I was offered.
And then the
Yeah.
other challenge is when you try to look ahead to October,
Yeah, I
It's
don't know
almost
if we
too
need to
far
set
out,
that date
no.
right now.
so.
We can make that a TBD for,
She would like dates so that they can put everything in print.
So
I
we
don't
would,
think it's bad to just, I mean, pick a date, it's not coinciding with Memorial Day would be a big one.
Yeah.
But October 5th and 12th, I don't think there's anything that is really profound
which is better.
we know of,
typically.
We can go with the 5th, because then it'd be the first Saturday, just like June 1st, the first Saturday. Maybe it's easier to remember. Mm-hmm. Right, right. You can sell your coupons.
The June 1st is Saturday, as is the May 25th, so. Yeah, is there anybody see any reason to distinguish between October 5th or 12th?
Just do the 5th.
No, do the 5th.
Okay.
First Saturday, like you said.
So then we agree that our recommendation would be June 1st and October 5th.
Yeah.
The idea being if there's a weather delay on the 5th, then the 12th would be a backup, I suppose.
Maybe, if they allow it.
Okay.
Drop off anything?
That's what I was wondering. I'm back to my tires and my refrigerator, but I
Ti-
don't think so.
Tires you could, but I remember like washing machines and stuff like that, you
Well,
could,
that,
because I already
that
had
they
a drop
would
off
take
dishwasher.
anyway, right?
I don't believe there are washers or, and there's nothing electric on the
I
list.
don't,
Oh, nothing electric on,
I
no.
don't
It's
think
their
so.
list that was on their website, that's,
Yeah.
I have a copy of it.
That was many years ago, so they
Yeah.
probably
I'm
left.
thinking that they'll take trash.
So I guess the township would have to request a list of what would be acceptable to distribute to.
Right.
I mean, unless that assuming that didn't change. Right, what was the date on that, Carol?
4/9/24.
Oh, okay, so that list is new, is brand new, okay. So once they would set a date, the idea would be for the township to publicize this on the website.
Correct.
And, okay,
And through our social
And
media
I was just,
channels.
well, that's what I'm jotting down now, so that we can keep like an open list, like a rolling list of what's put where.
It does say in here, lost it. ELC shall accept waste that can be lawfully disposed of in the landfill. So I think that means trash.
right.
But not electronic.
No,
No electronic.
no.
Okay, we'll get that on the list, and if you have the social media up and running, then we could basically publicize there. Next item on the agenda here is the Open Space Subcommittee. Laura, can you bring us up to date on what council's discussions have been with respect to that? As I understand it, the idea was we were hoping to get the open space program back within the EAC.
Yeah, let's say council really hasn't discussed it, but that was the idea that we talked about before with the manager. Because the program, I mean, the committee never got rebuilt or started otherwise outside of EAC, so, we'd like to have the committee back, so we need to figure out if we have interest, who wants to be on it, who is trained, who needs to be trained, how we can do that.
So what do the rest of the members think about this? I thought that the EAC managed the open space program pretty well. And I for one would like to see this fall back under the aegis of the EAC, and we reconstitute, an open space subcommittee, that we could then, as we always have done, solicit volunteers from the township residents who would like to, have their properties evaluated for incorporation in the open space program. And we have a set group of, in the past, we always had at least 4 members because it required 3 members to visit a site and score it. And that worked out fine. The other thing that I would suggest we do if we want to, take control of that again, and if we made a recommendation to council and council, agreed to that, we have at least 4 people on the committee and make a point that associate members, in the past, associate members of the EAC were able to serve on the open space committee. So that made it easier to have at least 4 people who were interested. And we were always pretty effective without going through flaming hoops to get at least 3 people together at a time that was convenient with the landowners. I chaired when I first came on board EAC, Ted Beardsley was the chair of the Open Space Committee. And then when he stepped down from that, I was elected to chair the EAC, or appointed, I forget exactly how we did that. And I would reach out to the landowners and find mutual dates that they were available, and then try to pull at least 3 of us together. It worked. It was easy to do that. So I personally would like to see the EAC just simply go back to the way it was, maybe with adjustments for improvements, but I think we had a proven track record, and if there were complaints going on, I never heard them.
No, there weren't.
I move that we have the EAC reestablish the open space and have it presented to council.
Sure, do we want to put together our names?
I'm sorry, put
Do
together
we want to
names?
put together our names of who wants to be on the subcommittee? And
Yeah, if council, I'm relying on you, Laura, because to, get a sense of what council would be receptive to hearing. I don't know if council will say, well, you're jumping the gun with giving us names. But I would think the way we did it in the past, people stepped forward. People that had an interest, I maintain an interest, and further, I would continue to do on that committee what I did in the first place was, because of my professional expertise, I always pulled together the information on the geology, the soils, hydrology, steep slopes, et cetera, et cetera. Also, with the help of the zoning officer, would always share the plot from the GIS system in the township and the maps of the township, but I always consult my state resources as well, and then share that information with the committee. So I would be more than happy to be on that committee. I'll be so presumptuous to say I would be happy to chair that committee.
we'd be happy to have you.
And so, I don't know who else would like to participate with respect to any training. I'm happy to do that. Okay, so, and I think it's probably a good idea that, this is one of those examples of the more the merrier. I don't think we should limit it to 4 people, because then it makes it easier to get 3 of us together. Once everybody has, I could also just generate a small sort of training session, talk about what we've done, how we've evaluated things in the past. So I would be happy for us to make a motion that we resume an open space subcommittee of the EAC, and that we would recommend the following membership. And one last thing I would add to that motion is that we would start out with the most recent scoring sheet that the Open Space Committee used, because we did adjust it with help from people in the Nature Conservancy to better to score individual items in a way that was somewhat commensurate with their relative environmental importance. We had some items that were scoring at one point that probably demand or demand a higher point total. So I would want to adopt that, the most recent scoring sheet. So Russ expressed an interest, Cheyenne expressed interest, Jen expressed interest, Kathy expressed an interest. So I would move we forward that to council.
I'll second that.
Is there further discussion? And I think it would also be okay, we'll cross that bridge when we come to it, but I don't see any reason why, for example, Janine would, I would imagine, be interested as well. So we could add membership, I'm sure, as we move forward. And I think it's, personally, I'll just say, it's great to see so many people interested, because although we made it work with 4, it'll be that much easier to do it with more members. So we can bring it to a vote if there's no further discussion. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay.
Just one question, I didn't want to bring it up in
Yeah.
the discussion, but how is a list generated that went out to residents that had potential land that could be considered? Because there's property near me off Flint Hill, and it's farmland, and the farm individual wants to sell part of that, and I thought it would be a good candidate to maybe find out if he was already approached, or could be approached not to sell the land. I don't know.
Yeah, in the past, we basically would have the zoning officer look at the GIS and see where there were large tracts of land to begin with, or potential tracts contiguous to land that was already preserved. Because that's one of our scoring criteria, with the idea that if we could get adjacent properties and build more contiguous tracts of open space, that's better for the whole all the benefits of an open space preservation. And then in addition to that, people would come forward with recommendations from friends or knowledge of, as you're doing, a tract nearby, and then we discussed reaching out to those individuals. So I would say that in my memory, the majority of these open space proposals came from individuals, but we also used to routinely solicit by sending a flyer out, an informational flyer to residents in the township, and in particular people with relatively large tracts of land. Again, the word of mouth is always helpful, and the ability of people to talk to property owners that they know, because something coming from the township, certain times people just simply recoil and think that somehow there's something nefarious. Whereas when one of us would know a landowner and would talk to them, as always, right away, they're hearing from a friend or someone that they don't have to worry has some ulterior motive. But that's generally the way we operated in the past. The other thing that I mean, the feel I'm getting in the room is great, because there's new people on this committee, and already it's the enthusiasm and ideas are palpable. And so I think we should approach this with open minds, so that we can have conversations about open space as a future agenda item, to discuss how we think it best to reach out and in essence advertise the program.
I have a question for Laura. How much money is left in the open space fund?
That's pretty much, I don't have the number.
To finish an open space
Pardon?
project, you need money to pay the people, so make sure we have enough money.
Oh, yeah,
in there.
there's, $9 million or so. There's a pretty good amount in there, because we've earned some nice interest in the past. Yeah.
And I think if we're constituted as an open space commission or committee, subcommittee, I think it would be appropriate early on to discuss our operating procedures and bring things to the attention of council that we think is appropriate, because we have to start by reading the original open space. I don't know what the appropriate word is. Charter is not the right word, but when this was pitched to township residents as something to put on you know, on the docket for a vote, it was presented with boundaries and guidelines. So we would have to start with that. Not, well, the Open Space Committee should have a pickup truck available to you, you know. So I'm being facetious with that, but I mean, there are boundaries that were established at the outset. And so we would have to refamiliarize ourselves with that and be respectful of that. And then if it made sense to consider, you know, changing something to use some of those funds in the interest of serving the open space program as constituted, I think that would be a good idea to discuss that. For example, just real quick, you know, at the park at Polk Valley, residents have come forward and said, oh, it'd be great to have informational, educational signage along the trail, and that being an open space acquisition. Same thing with Yerger Park, that it might make sense to try to, you know, to enhance those types of open space properties. And so I think those would be good ideas for future discussion.
One other thing that Drew didn't mention yet is that the open space program is a program established by the state of Pennsylvania. So there's a whole bunch of rules and laws and regulations that you know, regulate it. I think we ran into one problem there. I forget what it was, but there are. But our program that we had, you know, we were able to fall within all the rules and regulations. Oh, I know what it was. The thing was that they changed the rules so that money could be spent from the open space fund to maintain the open space properties. Yeah. And the parks were considered open space properties. So they wanted to use money there to maintain the parks. I don't know if they ever did that.
They have, yes.
You said that?
They have, yes.
We have done that in Lower Saucon.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Well, that would be something for me to dig into a little bit more and become more familiar with that, because I don't, to be candid, I haven't followed the council meetings over the last year to know all I know is we were in essence disbanded, and what happened in the interim, I don't know. I don't have direct knowledge. Probably part of my homework should be to look into that. So.
Drew, I have a question. Do you think if you were going back to where the original guidelines were, is that something you can email to everybody that expressed interest?
Sure.
Instead of all of us kind of doing this
Right,
same
right,
research,
right.
that would be.
Yeah, no, that's.
Yeah, just that we all have it, we're not all
Right.
kind of like scrambling, you know, that
Right.
way.
And then we're wasting time doing the same thing,
Yeah.
looking into the
Right.
same
Like,
thing,
if you,
so.
you know, do social media, if you don't mind sending that, then we're not kind of wasting, none of us are wasting time, but
Right.
double duty.
Yes.
Better term.
Okay.
PC.
Okay, so that motion will be taken to council, Carol, to reconstitute EAC as part of the open
We'll make it
space.
official.
I mean, reconstitute open space as part of the EAC, not the opposite. Okay, so the next agenda item comes, one of the members of our committee suggested that we did some groundwork to look at the code for junkyards and junk dealers, and I asked Carol to include it with our materials so that we can become familiar with this to discuss this issue. It is kind of interesting to me, just as a bit of background, that we did bring this up a couple of years ago, and at that point, no one brought forward the information that there was a code. So, as I recall, we sort of ended a meeting with the perception that everything was copacetic and we couldn't do anything about any problem junkyards or junk dealers. So I think it's great that this comes before us again for us to discuss. And again, Laura, any direct knowledge you have as a council members would be helpful in helping us understand, what's possible and how this should be, evaluated, monitored. I mean, some of the language in here I found interesting that sort of said that somewhere in here, any council member can go evaluate,
Yeah.
the operation of junkyards and junk dealers to make sure they're in compliance with the code. So that's a complete different, set of
Yeah,
circumstances than
I'd
we
say
were led
some
to
of this
believe.
is probably cut and paste from somewhere and they just adopted it. And it's been living this way for who knows how long, so. I don't think anybody from council's inspecting junkyards personally.
So this is from 1964.
1964?
1964.
Some of
That's
the
what it says at
things
the top of the first page.
started old.
It's
Yeah.
in
Right.
our current, like administrative bylaws.
Well, unfortunately, I do have to step out. I gotta get my son
Sure.
to soccer practice. But just in looking at this, I don't know, maybe the violations and penalties of $600 could be considered as something to update.
Well, I think
So-
this is clearly, if this was first adopted in 5/12/1964, this has clearly been collecting dust somewhere.
What was amended? If you look on that violation.
Yeah, this one that part got amended in 2021, but it,
Okay.
you know,
Right.
not knowing what part exactly changed.
That is the only thing that's been updated in this. I like that. What we collect in fines is the only thing on here. Nothing about microplastics, other chemicals.
So if I may, to your point, this topic was brought up to me at a council meeting. I go to council meetings. And this was brought up to me at a council meeting because there's people that are concerned. We do have a junk yard in Lower Saucon Township managed by Swint, is what this all started with. There's some people in the audience that would like to talk. But the concern that was brought to me was it's not zoned for what it is. We are not a zoning committee, I get that. But the concern was there's environmental issues with where it's all mostly metal is what it is. It's not plastics and stuff like that. I think he's waiting to take it in to get money for metal recycling, that kind of thing. But anyway, where it is, it's not zoned that way. And it was addressed, I guess. It looks like it was addressed and then COVID came is what happened. The reason why I got involved is because I'm on the EAC and the concern is the oils and all that stuff that goes down from where they are, goes into one of the residents' ponds, and it's an issue. So the whole thing was addressed to readdress the zoning concerns for Swint that were in 2017 and 18, and then just looks like it just stopped.
And I would say, when I think about this, I came in right at the last minute tonight, in part because I wanted to swing by there and see if my memory was correct. And I mean, some things here that are almost self-evident, like boundaries and so forth. If you drive Apple Butter Road, you have to pay very close attention if you're driving up the hill, because if you simply stay within the lines, there's a more than 50% chance you're going to clip a parked vehicle there. So the fence line in places is shorter than a standard F-150 or GMC 250 pickup truck. So the setback boundaries, for example, as outlined here, no way
And
are
the person
being
that gave me
respected.
the person that gave me all this information is, from what I understand, and this goes way back, is that they were originally granted to park their trucks there. That's what that was supposed to be, way back. And then it looks like through the years, there's just been constant issues, so.
And with respect to our role or whether this is appropriate for us to consider at all. This is an environmental issue, because if you look at the materials there are undoubtedly petrochemical bearing materials. Your average lawnmower, there's refrigerators with fluids in them, and air conditioners, and a lot of unimaginable things, because the fence is not an open chain link fence. But when you look in there, if you drive by, there's plenty of opportunities for hazardous fluids to be released. And I couldn't tell if there was any appropriate handling platform. All I ever see is soil in there. So normally when you process things like that, they're done on concrete and so forth, so that you're rupturing an engine or a motor or a refrigerator, and the fluids aren't just released directly into the soil. So I think there's plenty of opportunity for environmental degradation that justifies our conversation about this. Yeah. Yeah, you don't see anything like even a normal siltation fence that you would see around a construction or a development site. Yeah, it doesn't appear to be. So I suppose one way to consider this is if we move, I mean, we agree this is a problem. And the question will become, I think, how to move forward, whether it's through the zoning officer. What are our thoughts here? And I think, and we'll have to wait to hear from public comment for a few moments until we also discuss the developer item that's before us. Does anybody wish to discuss this at the moment further, or wait until we hear public comment?
I think we should hear public comment first, so we get a better understanding, because some people don't know, they don't know what it is.
Right. But I mean, public comment before we further discuss it. I don't know that we can skip an agenda item. Can we do that, Carol? Do you know? Can we move ahead on the agenda to public comment and come back?
Well, if the public's here for this topic, we could do that.
I would prefer to do that because everybody's
If they're here
time
to
is
talk about
precious. And
sheets, then
if
it
I
doesn't
don't
make
see any
sense.
benefit to having members of the public wait for us to go through anything further before they could speak. So I suggest that's what we do. And so if any members of the public want to speak to this issue, come up to the microphone, and we're happy to listen to you.
On that, I have to head out.
Thank
Okay.
you, Chad.
Good night.
Thank you. Thank you for your help. You have to say your name for the record.
My name's Tim Steely, and I live at 2485 out.
Can you bring the microphone a little closer?
How's that? Better? I don't think it's on.
I don't think it's on,
The
yeah.
switch.
Where is it? Right
In
here.
the,
How's that?
in the back.
In the back.
No, it should work. No. Don't touch it.
This goes on all the time.
There's a button right on top.
We need better microphones. Well,
We could bring this microphone over, right, Carol?
Or he could just talk into the. You just gotta shake it a little bit and tap it.
probably the battery.
It's scary, Carol. That's it.
My name's Tim Steely. I live at 2485 Apple Butter Road. The thing with the Swint is he has so many violations already against him. I don't understand why the township can't do more about it. I mean, he's not zoned for what he's doing. He never was zoned for what he's doing. It's a RA district. And I mean, he's operating basically a landfill, a scrap yard, salvage yard. And he also keeps expanding. A lot of his, you talked about water runoff and things like that. It's all going down into Greg's pond. He lives across the street from me, and it's ended up in his pond. The other people that live up the street, Severn, he went to spilling over onto his property. He's been notified by the pipeline many times because the pipeline runs through his property. He's not supposed to put fill on the pipeline or park cars or trucks. And he always keeps adding fill on the pipeline and parking on the pipeline, even though he's been told many times not to. It has been going on for a long time. Kathy mentioned about the original variance. His father got that variance, Kathy.
I saw it in 1994 for his trucks.
For his trucks, right. And that's all it was supposed to be for. And he never got any other variances after that. And it is just.
He has, I'm sorry, Tim, he has several cease and desist orders here through our township, but they stop in 2018.
You didn't have those.
Yeah, they do.
Oh.
Yeah.
Well, that's,
Yeah.
but they never really issued a cease and desist order.
Ah,
Which I couldn't understand why.
it's outlined in here
How do
of
you
all the
spell name of the
violations.
company?
SWINT.
There again, there was just no enforcement from the township.
It's our previous zoning officer, this is in 17, in our previous township manager, Leslie Hunt and
Well,
Chris
I remember there
Vargas.
used to be a car junkyard there.
Still is.
I mean, it used to be there a long time ago. So
Well,
maybe
they-
based on that being there, is
That's
why-
That's up further, that was 7.
is that up further?
Just a little bit.
Yeah, but most of that was cleaned
He's
out.
cleaned
I think
up.
just some
That's
I-beams
gone,
left there.
Right.
There's,
Yeah, this is.
And there's it's not really, I don't know what it is. It's not a commercial operation.
It's
There's a house
zoned
further
rural
down.
agriculture.
Other than this, there's further down a bunch of automobiles, but I think that was one individual, probably was planning to refurbish automobiles, I don't know what. But that's different than this. This is a commercial operation.
Right. Right. Yeah, he runs his business out there. And just like he brings garbage trucks back, parks them there overnight that are loaded. You're not allowed to do that technically. There again, the enforcement isn't there.
and he's zoned rural agriculture. That area is still rural agriculture.
Yeah, that never changed. Which is why his dad needed the variance even to park the truck.
Okay, so this was sort of a expansion under the radar kind of thing.
There you go,
You
yeah.
got that was the variance to park garbage trucks there?
In
Commercial
1994.
trucks,
Just
yeah.
regular trucks, not
Trucks.
garbage trucks.
I think at that time, he may have had 2 or 3 garbage trucks.
And you still got permission to park them.
Was that a recorded easement? Do you have a copy, was there, you said there was an easement for it or a variance?
A variance.
It's actually recorded?
I'd have to go back through all the notes again, but I'm sure it's in here somewhere.
I don't think the original variance is there, Kathy, but it was, yeah, there was an original variance, I think it was 96.
94 or 96, somewhere I saw, I read it.
Okay. And like I said, that was his father.
On November 18th, 1996, a zoning hearing was held in Lower Saucon Township regarding a variance application filed by Mr. Herman Swint.
Right.
It was voted unanimously, I don't know what that means, to grant Mr. Swint a variance from section blah, 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 to permit him to park commercial motor vehicles in an RA district.
Isn't there a number there?
There is 1608.03 B and 9. He was going to store approximately 8 vehicles overnight behind a 6-foot fence that he was going to install. He would store, I mean, it goes on and on. He would store some recyclables at his property using 8-yard containers. No waste would be stored on the property or in the trucks. The fence would be installed 80 feet from the road. 2 40-foot long trailers would be located on the property for the storage of certain items. That was it.
They don't do any of that stuff. I know they
The
don't.
other thing like Drew mentioned, he mentioned about hitting parked cars. Drew, you could see it when he comes back with trucks, he parks on the road all the time and moves stuff around and he gets off the road. Meanwhile, people are going around.
Yeah.
The garbage trucks on the shoulder.
I think she was,
I almost.
Oh, yeah, they're on the shoulder all the time, but while he's working, they'll
I
park
think
one
the
on the road
variance
for
gets
5, 10
recorded on a
minutes,
deed though.
do something and, jockey stuff around. Yeah, that happens in the morning and in the afternoon. There again, I think a lot of it is just lack of enforcement. He's under so many violations already. I just don't know how to get Christopher.
And has the township been recording these violations?
well, it looks like they have, but
Not
again,
lately or late, all in the 20
January
teens?
3rd, 2018, December 12th, 2017.
Probably not much since 2021, right, Kathy?
Not that I've, January 26, 2018, looks like everything stopped.
Yeah, no, they really didn't. I mean, I made a couple calls in between there, and whether they came out, I'm not sure, but I mean, Priscilla knows about it too. She's been by plenty of times. So
I don't know why. Do you know why it stopped?
I just couldn't get anybody to follow through on it. It's like they were afraid of him or something. I don't know. I don't know what he has on.
We got a new zoning officer somewhere in there, and we got a new,
do?
after Leslie, we had a new, I'm wondering if there was a transition and it didn't get passed along, like, what?
I think you're right.
Yeah,
That's
probably
exactly
Chris
the
Gargis
era
was
time
all
that
before,
was.
maybe.
I'm just,
Chris left.
Chris
Yeah.
left, Leslie left,
Yeah.
then there was probably an interim in there, I'm thinking, and then COVID came,
Right.
and I'm gonna bet you,
Yeah. Even one of those cases there, Kathy, Swint had to get a lawyer.
I saw.
Right, and he was dealing with Link.
Link Treadwell, who's,
Right.
he's also in there. I wonder if that lawyer, Kathleen, I just read it.
Yeah.
What's her name? If she's even, still around, still practicing, who knows, right?
Who knows? Yeah.
Do we have anybody else that wants to talk on it, or kind of hit all the highlights?
I think you should come up and tell us about your pond.
Yes.
Yeah.
My name's Gregory Boardman, and I own 2472 Apple Butter Road. And like Tim had mentioned, I have a pond, and you had mentioned that all the area where he has all that fill, there's no silt socks or any kind of protection from that. And like Tim said, he just constantly adds on. And I bought my property in 2016, and since then I've worked on the house and just fixed it up a little bit. Water was always an issue getting in the basement, always. Back years, the previous owner. And so that was kind of the first thing that I tackled. I dug out all around the property, around the foundation basically, and put in French drain, and was able to solve that. But still, I had to basically dig a trench on a dry creek bed, probably about 10, 12 feet wide, about 3, 4 feet deep in the front to control the water runoff every time we have a decent rain, basically. Because it is on the steep hill where Swint is. It's the steepest part of Apple Butter Road. And so all that silt and sediment comes into play for me, unfortunately. It's filling the pond. I have had excavators and stuff just try and keep up with some of the silt that's constantly an issue. And so it's just a concern for me to try and control the water. Because doesn't come into the house anymore, but it does overflow the pond nearly every year.
Do you actually see a stream of water leaving his property during a
Yeah.
rainstorm?
Oh,
Leaving,
yeah.
do you have a video of it?
You know,
You have a video of
I
it?
probably do somewhere, but I can work on getting you all that.
And the other question I had is, where does the water from your pond go?
There's several overflow pipes that go down into the creek behind.
Oh, there's a
My
creek
property.
behind there?
Yeah, there's a creek.
Does the creek have a name, or is it just an unnamed tributary?
No, to be honest with you. I bet it does.
Yeah, it's gonna probably ultimate drain down into the channel that comes off the
Yeah.
landfill by near the Ringhofer intersection would be my guess.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It's almost like wetland in there.
Yeah, and according to Tim, this is before my time of ownership, but Odell used to be able to mow the grass all
Correct.
the way around.
And it was beautiful. That's correct.
And now, like you said, it is like a swamp. Between my pond and Swint specifically, you can't walk through there without being 3 or 4 inches deep in mud.
Be a good place to take some, tests,
Yeah,
see if there's any oil in there,
yeah,
or,
right.
you know, whatever.
There is a natural spring right on the edge of the pipeline there that Swint used to use, or not Swint, Odell used to use for his drinking water. And before the community water came through, and that would be really nice to have clean
Well, if
water.
there's a spring there, then you got wetlands.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, the wetlands aren't caused by his runoff, they're just natural.
True, but like I said, in the past, Odell was able to mow
He
all the
could
way
be
around.
polluting.
Beautiful.
He could be polluting the wetlands, that's probably what he's doing.
Well, yeah, if you look at the storm water, and I can get a video of that, it's basically coming right down, funneled directly at that spring. What's coming off of the issue called where his property butts against the pipeline, but also out front on the road, that's equally as bad. It's just
It's got worse because it's filled in.
it has gotten worse. It's almost like it accelerates through his property, and it's just too much for the pond to be able to handle it, unfortunately.
Is any of the water from the road running onto your property or onto his property?
It runs through his property, and then I'd say a good portion of it comes into the storm basin
Wow.
across the street, and then it comes through about a 12-inch or 16-inch pipe underneath apple butter,
And then where does,
directly into my pond.
oh, directly into your pond?
Yes, that is from the north side of apple butter. That side comes down and into that catch basin, but also
On our side, that comes from the spring on our side.
yeah, that's on the north side of apple butter, but on the south side it also funnels over my bank and directly into the pond, and then
So there's really not any kind of a curb there or
There's
anything to
not.
control
No.
the water?
Do you have, well, Tim, or you have city? Bethlehem or Hellertown? Bethlehem? Hellertown? Bethlehem?
So when was that put in? Did the garbage dump do that?
I think so.
Yeah, that was a long time ago.
That's fortuitous. Okay, do you have anything else that you want to share with us? Do you wish to speak to this
Mike?
item? No. Okay. Okay, so, I mean.
Is Bobby here? Is Bobby here? Bobby? He, oh, he left, okay.
So, trying to think about what the appropriate thing to do is, it seems to me that this is a potentially significant environmental issue. And so whether we make a motion to bring this to the attention of the zoning officer or township council, I mean, it would seem to me that this is
Both, yeah.
a zoning officer
Yeah.
issue.
And the Hanover engineering.
Yeah, we can move that forward. I don't know if we wanted to, if there's anything that I didn't get to read through the ordinance, if there's anything in here that we thought we would suggest
In particular,
changing, not that it's easy, because, you know, changing zoning, anything is a big to-do, but if there's something blatantly wrong in here,
well, I think that, I
might
mean,
just
when
be
I
more
look
that
at
it's
this-
not being enforced,
when I
and
look
it's
through
not
this
that
today,
bad
for example,
here.
in section 103.8, storage, property maintenance hours, you know, item A, all junk should be behind a fence, as specified in subsection B below, which fence shall be set back at least 50 feet from all lot lines of the premises occupied by the junkyard. That fence is 12 to 20 feet back at
Right,
best
right.
from the very edge of the road. So property lines are usually a little bit on a setback from the roadway to begin with. And so, for example, it's hard for me to imagine that that is being,
Enforced.
you know, here's on D, it says all junk shall be stored and set back at least 50 feet from any adjoining premises and at least 75 feet from the nearest edge of the cartway of any public road or highway. So that would be an obvious thing for a zoning officer to evaluate. So if we felt that we should recommend specific items to consider,
Yeah.
that one's rather obvious, which would be 103-8, sub-item A and
D
D.
and G might be a good one to check on.
And then item F,
The fuel.
with respect to firefighting equipment having access, that would be another item that I think is, would be worth consideration. And then,
So I have a question. I found the junk and junkers in our bylaws or whatever they're called, you know. But I think the fundamental question is that it's zoned RA. I mean, I think that's
Right,
more like,
I get what you're saying, that's a,
Zoning and use are two different things.
are they?
So you can have, like, you can do with a special exception, you know what I mean, there's for a use variance, there's different ways around that.
So the variance is not being
Well,
monitored.
I have a couple questions, just from like, I mean, not that I agree with what they're doing by any capacity, but, so it looks like this was an ordinance that was put in place in 1964. Now, when you said it's been a junkyard for a long time,
Yeah, but you said it wasn't this property, it was somebody else's property.
It was adjacent, it's adjacent, that was Severn Auto at the time.
okay, well, that's what, I don't know, but, so sometimes you run into an issue where things predate zoning, you know, so if a use was in place, and I would be a little concerned with like how that reads, you would almost have to adhere to what that says, you know what I mean? So if they gave him a variance, but you can hold him to what's in that variance. to
That's what I
prevent
meant,
from spilling
that's
over.
what I
Yes.
meant.
But just attaching to just the zoning part of it is always kind of a slippery slope, you know what I mean?
But you can enforce the rules of the variance.
Correct, yes. But when you mentioned
I
about it
think-
being there for a long time, I didn't know where that fell.
I have a nerdy question here that, or some information to put into the conversation. Years ago, people's property went to the middle of the road. And it's only since the township started to get subdivisions and resurveying and all that stuff, that they required that your property move back so many feet from the middle of the road, and now that's what you own, and now the township owns the rest of it. I wonder if he's using that to say, well, I can park my trucks here because it's my property. But there might be a road law that says you can't park on the road, you know, a different law that trumps what I was saying about the owner's property going to the middle of the road.
I think your variance stated it had to be 80 feet.
Correct.
So it's defined in the variance.
There's tons of paper.
We need to enforce our code, and this is a repeated issue.
Yeah, a law without recourse is a suggestion.
I mean, and one of the
Yeah,
key
and
questions is the land use practice here permitted in the first place?
Well, maybe we
Yeah,
send it
that's
over to
the zoning
Well, Diane
manager
said,
and let them come back to us that, you know, this has been presented.
goes around his own.
And then see the next move, because I think all we can say is give advice.
But there's also a storage thing here. It says all gasoline and oil removed within 12 hours from arrival in said premises. I mean, I think that things have been there for years.
Right.
And probably never drank.
So a question is for us, what do we think is the appropriate action at EAC? Does someone want to make a motion to determine if this land use is permitted at that location in the first place? And if so, to follow through whether the activities there are in compliance with the code?
I'll make that motion. Whatever you
Okay.
just said.
Well, yeah, I was gonna say, I think that we can put it forward to have council direct the zoning officer to go dig into this whole can of worms here and see really.
And Hanover Engineering or no?
Yeah, well, whoever they need, you know, whoever the appropriate people are, if it's the engineer,
I would
the
think
zoning
both.
officer,
The zoning officer is about zoning.
solicitor might have to look at some of the documents that were drawn up and all, so.
So a motion,
Probably have a bunch of research
a
to
motion to
do.
direct this to township council to
To
request the zoning officer and/or
go on
township
it.
engineers evaluate whether this site is, if this activity, if this commercial activity is permitted at this location, and are they following the regulations in chapter 103, if they are permitted?
I think the second part of that, the engineering part of it and the environmental would be secondary to that. So
Is it?
let's just, you would assume if it comes back that it's not, then you would say, okay, hey, you know what I mean? I
Yeah.
think that would probably be the.
Whose job is it to determine whether or not there's violations of this
Zoning.
thing? The zoning officer?
That's what I thought. Yeah.
My concern is for the residents that if you just get the zoning officer involved, it's pretty clear that it's, you know, that it's not zoned for what it's being used for. That's why I think it's important to also have the township engineer, Hanover Engineering, to see the runoff and the silt and the dirt and the, you know, those kind of things.
Right.
It's more one issue.
There's more than one issue, correct?
But it seems like the starting point is to see if they're in compliance with the zoning ordinance in the first place, and whether this activity is even permitted at that location. Because from what I've heard, it sounds like the only thing that's been permitted is a variance. If a variance was granted, that implies that even parking those trucks was not in
No,
perfect
he's allowed to park
compliance.
8
So,
overnight behind a 6-foot fence.
okay, so you've made that motion, right?
Correct.
So do we have a second?
I'll second.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Okay, so I think that's the appropriate starting point for all of this.
So would it be wise to give Laura like backup copies of all the research here?
It would have to come from the person that I received it from, so I would have to ask
Oh.
first. But I'm pretty sure this is public
That's what I was thinking.
knowledge.
Do it right to mail request.
Dude,
Add it to the
954 of them.
list.
Has that been done?
Laura started twitching.
Has that been done around here lately?
I have no
I'm sure this,
files in this.
no, you probably
I don't
don't, but
know.
the zoning
We-
office does,
Well,
sure.
they hopefully have a lot of that stuff.
I know, but to expedite it, I would think that individual wouldn't mind if there's
I will
stuff
find
that's
out.
okay.
been.
I will find out.
We'll put
Okay,
it on the-
so I
on
think
file.
I think we're good there as a
Thank
starting
you.
point.
Thank you.
Is there any other public comment on other items?
I'd like to make a comment about your, about the use of the money that you have for, maintenance. Mike Keeper, 4310 Little Saucon Road. So there's the golf course that you guys made into a park. Tons of
Woodland
invasive
Hills.
species that pretty what you have, that lower Saucon Road there is getting undermined from the runoff. Because when you build a golf course, you make it so the ball can roll. So it's all impervious land. You know, it's compacted, except for your sand traps and roadways. So I think you should address that part, because you're gonna lose that road. And I have a nursery up the river, and we bring tractor trailers down that road all the time. And either direction, the road's gonna fail. Island Park is gonna fall into the train tracks at the other end. To go back by the other way, the road's gonna fail because it's getting undermined. And there's some simple solutions there. You know, improve the wetlands.
You know where Woodland Hills is.
Water management, get rid of the invasive species and trees. Open soil up, put some good trees in, you know, stuff
Yeah.
that absorb the water. You know, aspiration, even just get some more trees in there. I saw they did some things, but
Right.
You know anybody that could plant some trees or some,
I do, you probably don't have time, but
some non-invasive species in there that could probably clean that up for the township?
I could help you, yeah, but, not looking for work. It's just something that I observed because that's what we do.
Yeah, that road. Some years ago, I don't know the exact date, but I'm guessing 2010-ish, sometime after Hurricane Ivan, the township contracted me. I was not involved in open space here or anything. And I was contracted to evaluate the erosion problem in that gully coming off of the golf course that flows down and under Lower Saucon Road, or Saucon Road. And made all of those points that I had in the report, and it's in the township's hands, of the land use change there. That used to be farms, like your family farmed it. There was a farmhouse on that property,
For years.
right in the center, actually. So it was all agricultural land, and then converted to the golf course. And as you said, all of those things that sometimes hydrologists call that type of grass green pavement, in terms of its inability to have a high infiltration capacity, and its ability to generate runoff instead. And so that gullying that occurred in there had been occurring in the first place because of the runoff, but then it was accelerated by Hurricane Ivan runoff in 2006. In fact, the irony of it is that slug of sediment that was yielded from the top of the slope flowed down through a relatively steep portion of the slope and was just conveyed completely through the channel, and then filled in the channel down near the bottom. And here's where the irony comes in. That we call the ability of a channel to convey a particular discharge channel capacity. Well, the sediment filled that channel in and reduced its channel capacity. So during big runoff events, it all flowed over into the field. Now here's the irony. That now supports wetland vegetation because of the overflow from the channel. And when I brought that up, someone said, well, we will destroy a wetland if we clear the channel out. The irony is clear it out to its original capacity. So once the wetland became a wetland, there was a tremendous reluctance to do anything about it. Now, I don't drive that way very often, but water used to lay on that road and down by the intersection, which turns into a traffic hazard at any event. But if that water turns to ice in the winter,
You're done.
it's self-evident what the problem is. But when I suggested they do that, the response was, that's now a wetland. But as far as controlling the water in the first place, up on the top of the hill, that will be something we can look into. If we become the open space committee again, we can look in again to control of the budget and what's appropriate for maintenance. And this would be more of an ecological hydrologic restoration project to do that. So I think that's a point well taken and an endeavor worth pursuing. I mean, ultimately, the open space, as I understand it, was designed to keep everything from being developed and living with the environmental issues that often are attendant to that. But if we really want ecosystem function and so forth and hydrologic function to be part of this, I think it would be appropriate to evaluate that.
I think it would, and also $742,000 came from the DCNR for that project, and I bet you they would be very interested.
It might go over by her.
Huh?
It might-
Oh, sorry. And it shows here that it was done in October of 2014, when it was brought in, and then, of course, it was converted to be countryside lane, grass trails, property that allow visitors to hike, bird watch, and enjoy natural beauty on this track, which totaled over 541 acres. So, yeah, so I think maybe that would be a definite,
Something we can, something
we
we can.
definitely
attend to.
need to address.
I'm sorry?
If we have the money, we should do something
Yeah.
with it, and there are people in the community, my older brother has a doctorate in environmental engineering, specializes in hydration.
Yeah.
So, you know, we're familiar with these things.
And then, again, at this stage of the game,
I think it's a great idea.
I mean, this is something we can pursue going forward, and particularly if the Open Space Committee becomes part of the EAC again, then that gives us a little more agency.
And I think if you spend some money, there are
Do you
people
feel
who are
like
gonna be aware of, they follow the money, they're gonna be aware of the park, they're gonna be more active in the park, you know.
Yeah.
I don't think we could choose much.
Yeah, I think it's a great example that we need to maintain.
It's on the project list.
Yep, add plus.
Okay.
And the second issue.
Okay.
We have another farm on Buttermilk. There's a runoff issue. And Kathy's gonna get this done. It's a lot of, there's a washout, comes across, Apple Butter Road. And
Buttermilk.
Buttermilk, yeah, that's right.
Buttermilk.
But, it was washing the neighbor's driveway out, the adjoining property. They asked if they could put a swale in on my land. I said yes, but they did not put a swale in. They just dug a trench, didn't stabilize it, didn't do anything. So now I have soil erosion, in my farm. And it's coming across over the road, not going under the road. And it's going on the Pitcher's farm.
Right,
And it's a hazard in the winter.
right.
Big sheet of ice. And now it's kind of my problem because I have the swale. So we kind of, and I've approached neighbor, they're gonna send her emails. I don't know if Kathy has.
Kevin, I don't know the name. There are people that bought property in Williams Township, but the driveway is in North Saucon Township. And they decided to revitalize this old, very old, like 100-plus-year-old driveway. And they decided that they wanted to use this driveway to get to their property instead of going up Texas Road and around in Williams Township. The driveway abuts Mike's property. I mean, they're right there. Well, there's so much water that comes off the driveway. I mean, it's just a tsunami, and
Right.
it just comes down, and somebody's gonna get hurt because the water just goes across through. I mean, it is significant.
Right. No, I know, I'm familiar, I live right up that area too, so I'm fundamentally familiar with that situation. And the gulling on that road, and I mean, it moves the big cobbles
It's
when
bad.
there's a big runoff, so.
The problem is actually in Williams Township. So those 2 lots on the back of what would have been Brody's farm.
Yeah.
None of that water hits, I don't know if it's retention pond, but none of that water hits that pond. So it's been diverted around and it goes down through the hedgerow. And that's where the issue is. I wouldn't mind working with the committee to capture some of that water. Where's, I would love to have water in my nursery, you know, a pond. I don't want to spend thousands of dollars on engineering, have someone else engineer something that we do every day,
Right.
you know.
This is, I mean, I would be interested myself in just having a conversation with people here in the township. But sometimes I'm reluctant to make motions to council on things at this scale because we've never done that before in my time on this committee, and I'm not sure it's in our purview to deal with individual problems of that nature. I think it'd be, and myself, I would want to talk to the people here in the township and try to follow up on that. Yeah. These are ongoing issues throughout townships that are hard to resolve. So I don't know what the precedent is, but I don't know if it's in our purview. But I'm curious to look into it for my own edification to see what are the boundaries of the EAC, in fact. Yeah, but I will follow through on that, right? Yeah. Okay, one of the last items on our agenda is actually potentially a big one. We have plans for a Sheets development that came around in with the call to meeting. In fact, a preliminary version of this at the meeting that was canceled a month ago. And so there's a lot here to evaluate. And the one thing that there enough here to pass these around? There are. So I'll just, I mean, we have them on, no, you don't have this, I don't think. The EnviroTrack Geologic Report. That did, I was a bit confused by that because I couldn't find it in my call to meetings previously.
It wasn't, when
But I know I read it.
I had it sent to
You,
us
okay.
because I read it in the
I never thought to
plan.
look at your emails. I kept looking at Carol's emails and saying, I know I saw this, I know I saw this.
She sent it, Carol did send it.
Okay, does everyone have a copy of this or would like one?
I'd like one.
Yeah, pass this, there's one here, Cheyenne, for you too. So I'll just cut to the chase and tell you the one issue that I was concerned about. With a development project of this site, of this scale, you know, it's appropriate more so I think for the township engineers to evaluate it unless anybody sees something that they want to raise. But I will raise this issue and something that I think we should draw to council's attention to evaluate, and that is the geologic report here, which is required, and in part is part of a carbonate terrain. This site's on carbonate rocks. Okay, it's on the Allentown Formation, and so that invokes the carbonate terrain issue. So the data set shows in Figure 5 in this EnviroTrack's report. They have soil borings on the site, and now I'm having trouble on. And it's funny, the computer one I've been more okay. So Figure 5. I'm trying to see if there are no page numbers here, but in Figure 5 shows the location of soil borings. There are a number of soil borings, but then they only report, for example, the depth of the groundwater at the site at an average depth of 13.75 feet below ground surface. I would prefer to see this report consist of logs of all of the boreholes that shows the stratigraphy. So they describe what the unconsolidated material is above bedrock, but it doesn't show the spatial distribution of the materials, nor does it show the elevation of groundwater in each soil boring. So if there's significant variation, indicating that it's at an average depth of 13.75 feet, in my opinion, is insufficient. And the reason why I'm concerned about this is a gas station that's going to have underground storage tanks. The underground storage tanks show up on the development plans as being towards the south end of the site where the bank building is currently, but it doesn't show what the water levels are or the stratigraphy in that location. Where's bedrock in that location? What's the depth of groundwater? Because if there is a release from the tanks ever, groundwater, the depth of groundwater is gonna be crucially important. And so I would think we should recommend, or I would make a motion, depending on further discussion, but I would make a motion that township request the basic information from these boreholes that shows the logs and the stratigraphy. Where does the sedimentology change in the vertical sequence, and how well do they correlate from borehole to borehole? And most importantly, the depth to groundwater below ground surface in each of these soil borings. Just thinking your way through in the simplest of terms, if we think, say, imagine that there were 9 boreholes and an average of 13.75. You can arrive at that average of 1375 with a tremendous amount of variability from place to place. It could be, one of the boreholes could encounter groundwater 1.5 feet below the surface. So by sharing the data as just an average, wouldn't give me enough information to be able to evaluate the development plans fairly, especially the location of the underground storage tanks. There is a misperception among some people that the underground storage tank problem is resolved because in the late 1900s into the turn of the century, all commercial facilities had to replace corrodable metal tanks with non-corrodable synthetic tanks. But unfortunately, the groundwater contamination remediation business is thriving because we find a million ways to release gasoline from underground storage tanks, from broken pipes to, the list goes on and on. So I think it, particularly given that this is carbonate terrain, that a little more detail in the geologic report is appropriate. And specifically that, what's the depth to groundwater below the surface in each boring, and what is the stratigraphy in each boring? And I would request the geologist to create a stratigraphic section. All that means is to correlate the different units spatially in 3 dimensions. I don't know what the rest of the committee thinks, or would this not be something of concern?
Oh, no, at least I speak for myself. We would defer to that's your whole professional career. I have a question though, what you're speaking of. If you look on page,
Excuse me.
I guess if this is page 1, then this would be page 3. I don't understand what this means. For groundwater evaluation is the heading up here.
Okay, yeah.
Groundwater in the unconsolidated overburden is expected to flow to the southeast. So that tells me they don't know.
Right.
Did you see the details of how they?
Right? Is that what that means?
Well, it could. Here's the question, Kathy, as I would see it. I noticed that as well. So that would give, knowing the distribution of the different elevations to groundwater would allow you to, I mean, the groundwater surface is an energy surface. We call it the water table in an unconfined aquifer of this sort. So, and we call the energy of the water table the hydraulic head. So the distribution of water surface elevation is going to also tell you the distribution of hydraulic head or energy in the system, which should indicate the direction of flow. One could do a cursory evaluation of a site and say, for example, on your property, you have Bull Run running through your property. A cursory examination would suggest that groundwater flow on either side of that creek is converging towards the creek, okay? And it probably is, based on the overall topography, where the wetlands are on the property, all suggest that the water flows towards that creek and converges on it. You can make that assessment and make the statement that it's expected to flow towards Black River just by knowing Black River's there. That doesn't mean that's exactly what's happening. Now, if they are making that statement also on the basis of their knowledge of the distribution of water table or hydraulic head from those borings, then they're making that assertion on the basis of two observations. What's expected based on the creek being there and expecting the shallow flow system to flow and converge towards it, but also they may be using the distribution of hydraulic head to make that statement. The problem from our standpoint is they're not substantiating why the groundwater is expected to flow to the southeast. Is it merely because Black River's there, or is it sort of corroborated by the distribution of hydraulic head in this shallow flow system? So by sharing the information on where the water table is in each of those borings, we get a better sense of whether or not that's being used as background for this conclusion. So I think that this report can be improved substantially by simply the presentation of data they already have. And that's what I would suggest that Township Council do, is refer to the engineers, township engineers, that they request as part of this proposal the data from the borings, the stratigraphy, and the depth to groundwater to determine what this assertion is based on.
Where the water's going.
800 to. So you really can't determine the water table from these borings.
Yes.
Because it's finite consensus. It's only isolated wells.
Right, but they also look at the overall, other groundwater wells, the deeper wells, which is, to look at impacts. That's always one reason for them looking at the Department of Conservation Natural Resources Groundwater Information System. That's basically telling you where there are other wells that are probably deep wells that are tapped into the Allentown Formation, or in some cases, the unconsolidated material on top of bedrock, sometimes people just call overburden or regolith, or if they know exactly its origin, might use more specific terms for that material. The word regolith and overburden are just generic words for unconsolidated material. Could be weathered debris from the bedrock. It could be glacial deposits. It could be alluvium from stream deposits. We have names for all of the subtypes of unconsolidated material. On a site like this, I wouldn't think that they would bother to make a distinction and just consider it unconsolidated material, overburden, or regolith on top of the bedrock. But there's probably two groundwater systems here. That what exists in the unconsolidated material, and then the bedrock system. I suspect with the standard geology around here that the shallow groundwater is connected to the deep groundwater. The flow rates would be different and so forth. But I think that to evaluate the potential impacts of that tank field would benefit from knowing where the depth to groundwater is and what the hydraulic gradient, because the reason that's important is if there is a release for whatever reason, you're predicting the likely direction of movement of that contaminant. I mean, petroleum is going to mostly float on the water table. We call it an LNAP, or a light non-aqueous phase liquid. We all know oil or gasoline will float, but gasoline's a set of very complex compounds that in and amongst themselves have different solubilities. So at a typical contamination site, a consulting firm would go out and they would probe to get water samples, and then they would create what we call isopleth maps of the concentration, not of gasoline, but of all of the components, soluble components of gasoline too. So there'd be a benzene, a toluene, if MTBE, wouldn't be an issue at a new gas station, but we used to put MTBE in gasoline as noxygenate. So you would create maps for the concentration of all of these different soluble components. So whereas most of the gasoline will float on the surface, there's a significant component of soluble compounds that'll dissolve in and migrate with the groundwater, dissolved in the groundwater below the groundwater table. So knowing the direction of flow is quite important, and knowing the depth to groundwater would be important to, I think, evaluate these plans more carefully.
Did you get that motion there,
You
Carol?
have to show that
So the motion is simple. It's not all of that rationale.
He did
The-
have a
the-
nice
the
sentence at the
motion-
beginning.
The motion simply would be to have EnviroTrack release the information from their boreholes that shows the depth to groundwater in each borehole, the depth below ground surface, and to substantiate the assertion on page 3, under the heading of groundwater evaluation, that supports the assertion that groundwater in the unconsolidated overburden is expected to flow to the southeast towards the Black River. Is that based on data from the boreholes that shows the hydraulic gradient? That would make sense to them.
I second that motion. Yeah.
It was just, I'm watching Carol and she's like, got her little hands going, I'm like, all right.
Carol, you always know you can just email me and I'll clarify anything that you need for minutes. So do we have a second on that motion?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Did anybody else have issues with the plans? When I look at the engineering, it all seemed pro forma and standard and,
I mean, I went through it. The one thing, I did drive around to find that retention pond, and that's an interesting little road.
Yeah, it's hard to get to.
Well, it's that side road, and the road's not maintained, but people live on it. Is there any concern with that? Because apparently from this, it was built for, due to the, obviously the retail, but then the 78, because it cut through.
so they're not, so I didn't pick up on that. They're just reusing an existing retention pond, same dimensions and so forth.
That's my understanding, but I didn't know if anyone else read.
Yeah, in which case I would, saying that, I would, again, I think it would be appropriate for the township engineers to make sure that retention pond is sized and designed to match the current impervious surfaces and stormwater generations.
A man-made stormwater retention pond is located immediately east of the subject property and adjacent to Interstate 78. The stormwater retention pond was constructed during the construction of Interstate 78 between 1981 and 1993.
Oh, that part I
That's it.
read, but I thought you were getting something from this too, because that, they have their own.
I got it out of there too, but I
Okay.
read it at our meeting last
Because the-
month, so
It
I
doesn't say.
not great, because you have to blow all that up to
But that was
read.
the common.
Well, there's really no additional impervious surface,
What is it now?
because like the shopping center's
Okay.
already paved over.
That's already paved over, so
So they would have to meet
I don't know.
UMS4 too, wouldn't they?
I would think.
The
I didn't
size
read
would
all of the
change.
footnotes on the plans for that. At a glance through everything seemed
And
appropriate
that was
to me.
just my concern.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
just was interested.
I'd be a little bit reluctant to make a motion without digging in more deeply.
We'll just make a motion that we want more time to review.
We could, but then we had this and I didn't review it, so
I think this goes to planning again at the end
Okay.
of this month, because it got.
is
tabled
Haas still on
somewhere
planning?
along the line for some reason.
Haas is not on planning.
Who, Haas, no.
Haas, okay. Because he's a civil engineer, so he would pay attention to that routinely.
Kalogi is what
I mean,
is,
our engineers may have already drafted a list,
Okay.
but it's not in here.
I would be shocked if they wouldn't have.
Yeah, because this has been.
That's
around
usually
for a
something
while.
that they would pay close attention to. So if we have no other concerns with that, do you?
I don't see any details in here about the design of burying the gas tanks.
Right, they're
Which is
just
very
showing where the
important.
tank field is.
Yeah.
That's true.
When they wanted to put a gas station in down at the Giant Market, we complained about it. You know, we were worried about the gas tanks leaking and all that. And, because there's a stream that runs under there, which they put in a pipe. And they proposed to put it in a concrete container, you know, like a concrete vault, right? Would that be sufficient?
Well, I didn't see any, I thought maybe they weren't here, but, so there is no, I mean, that's another question if there's.
I didn't see any detail of, you know, how they're gonna bury the
Because
gas tanks.
Yeah, the runoff and so forth was there, so Let me just see something here.
It's gonna be state regulated, so they're gonna have to hit that guideline. State guidelines.
Just seems funny that there's 2 sheets within a mile distance. There's one further up the road. One up by Bethel Steel.
On C200, they show where the gas tanks are supposed to go. But they don't give any detail, you know, any indication of
But
the
you
detail.
just weren't a mile, but it's still
No,
close.
it's Teletown that's gonna have it. There's gonna be a sheet prepared, Star Automotive,
Oh, yeah.
and then right down the Hudson Wawa.
That's their problem for letting Joe
Yeah.
building down, that was just, that was asinine. That was asinine.
Did that get passed?
Yeah.
I'm sorry, I can't hear you.
It's off the record.
What are they doing with the first
We're under agreement on,
one? Oh, really?
yeah,
Oh, good.
separately, so we'll see what actually shakes out.
Good.
Yeah. Yeah,
That's a big fact.
5 acres, 540.
Can you say that?
They only have, they have a
The ones that
sinkhole
would really help
mitigation
you, I think we're gonna
plan
pull out.
in a place where they're talking about geotechnical details. They don't mention
They didn't
anything
present
about
anything
the,
else, so
the gasoline tanks.
They just show where they're gonna be. Did you see that
Yeah,
part?
yeah. So I think that's a missing point here. Let me try one other set of these plans and see.
We're done. Social media. Yes, we did.
Because it's interesting, they have a lot of other of the subsurface plumbing and so forth, the plans. And pipe bedding in the subsurface. They have the underground storage tank vent plan. Water main service line.
Nothing. They're still gonna be there. They're practically building a house.
Oh, I know, thanks. Got a jump screen. And they're gonna butt right into that restroom.
Harry, you still with us?
It's,
Still with us?
Yeah, sorry. I just came from a tennis match. I
I'm
couldn't
just
help.
teasing you.
I'm sorry.
Oh, no. I'm in the same boat. I have children. We don't sleep. Put it that way.
get out of here if you want to.
Yeah, honey, it's 9:00. You're good.
We won't
You're
give
good.
that demerit. They're cutting costs.
It's
You know,
hot.
A's usually cold up there, like I sit up there. and
It
like,
says
I should-
preliminary and final.
I'm not.
Preliminary final, so.
What
I
did
don't
you
know what
find there,
that means.
Alan?
Huh?
Did you find something regarding that?
No, I'm just saying that it said these plans are preliminary final. Land development,
Right.
so.
I did, but I don't remember what it was, and I know I didn't.
No, I'm through it. Yeah, so I don't see in the detailed plans, I mean, they have subsurface storm drain plans, manhole plans, but nothing that shows the gasoline storage tank
And I
plans.
think we need to amend,
There's a note on here that
I
says
think
that
that should be clarified.
yeah,
project is not
just to add it to
Because that's the
the.
most important part of the whole thing.
proposed any utilities or
Fuel oil.
that could be dedicated for public use.
Good job. We did change our, good catch on Alan. We did
A lot of
that.
times in this kind of a situation, they refer to a whole bunch of special plans, you know, for doing that, like a whole book of detailed plans.
So I would be inclined to make another motion that they include detailed plans for the underground storage tank construction.
Agreed. I'll
Because
second.
again, given that this is in carbonate terrain, that by ordinance is identified as sensitive terrain. So, is there a second to that motion?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, Carol, same thing, or did you get that, or no?
You would be inclined to make another motion to do what?
I'd be kind to you and just repeat it? Yeah, that we encourage council to require that they provide detailed plans, detailed engineering plans for the construction of the underground storage tank, for the underground storage tanks. And we think it's crucial because this site is in sensitive carbonate terrain.
And they probably exist and just might not have, I don't know how they put what gets in our packet. So.
I have one question. Can we have somebody pull, and you might be the best, I don't want to throw more at you,
No.
but can we have somebody pull what the state requirements are when they put an underground tank in?
I could find that.
So we can compare what the
Right.
guideline is to what they plan to do. So if
We have a code
We
that
have
just
that.
got updated.
Yeah, we just changed the ordinance.
For the underground storage tanks?
Yes, you remember.
Okay.
well, the township does, I'd like to see what the state requirements are as
Yeah.
well. Just so
It's
that
the
we're
state
comparing it.
requirements.
State
Okay.
requirement.
Changed it too.
Okay.
Wait, ours are in compliance with that?
I
It's in
did,
our
I
minutes.
did see that, yeah.
It's in our minutes.
Yeah, that was not that
Yeah.
long ago.
Yeah, it was last year or sometime.
Well, can you pull what
Okay.
they actually are so that comparatively, if we're gonna look at what they say they're gonna do, we can say, okay, the state says this,
I
and
can-
we know they're going bare minimum or they're going above considering what you were.
I can get that.
Soil.
Yep. Okay, boy, we're running late here, but updates or reports, it's too bad now that Chad left because
I was gonna-
the EAC Network Virtual Concert Conference notes.
Can we just table that for the next?
Till the next meeting?
I don't think it's going to because.
Okay,
We're done.
I haven't
Right.
eaten-
It was phenomenal,
It was
though.
great. It was
I
great.
learned so much.
Yeah, I love that.
so
It was great.
we'll put that on next month's agenda. I think that's a great idea. Do we want to do a similar thing with the minutes, or did people go through the minutes carefully?
I didn't
I
even
went
see
through
the minutes.
Minutes and there's a section on, hold on.
So we can correct them, and Alan's here, so someone went through these minutes carefully.
I read the minutes, I didn't see anything that,
Page
thought needed to be
2,
changed.
line 44. So,
and I didn't see much at the
it's
meeting.
50 years, not 500 years.
Changed to 50 years.
Yeah. They probably feel like they've been around for 500, but
I have to say, it's nice to be part of an active EAC.
yeah.
It's
This has been a great night.
So I have something that we need to add. Can I say that now for next time?
For the next meeting.
Yes. Springtown, we went into a source water protection with them back several years ago, and they reached out to me because there's a PDF I have, and I can forward to everybody, or Carol can forward it to you, you can put it in our minutes. But they don't know if it was actually signed, and they want to regroup on signing it. And what it is their water source protection crosses over into Lower Saucon down, I guess.
Cook's Creek, for
Creek and all
example, is a
that.
big one in Springs.
Yeah, so they want to, one, see if we signed an agreement, and two, if not, what do we need to do to get it signed? So if we could add that to our,
The next month's agenda.
if we
Yeah.
could.
I wonder if
We
they're,
did, I was on the committee.
You were, and I
Worked on
have
that
the
thing.
PDF that I found on our site. I, reached out to Laura, but she didn't remember if I could say that publicly. Don't put that in the notes, no, I'm kidding.
was that where they were gonna drill a new well or something and they wanted to, they spread the,
Mm-mm.
It was
So
just
Carol,
a
did you
general
get that
source
request
water
for the agenda
protection
item?
plan
Oh.
for,
Springtown source water protection?
yeah.
Yes, it's called Source Water Protection, Springtown, Lower
I don't know
Saucon
that we
Storage
needed to,
Water
it
Protection
was
Report.
for them.
It was for them.
Yeah, so I don't
And there's a lot of items that were supposed to be done in correlation to it. I didn't know,
Well, just remember one
So-
thing.
but I'll forward it.
They have.
Are we
a
ready for a
spring
motion to adjourn?
in Lower Saucon Township that they use to get water. And is that spring gonna be included in their source water protection plan? If it is, that means that they have some ideas about what to do about the land around that spring. That's on
We'll
David's
discuss it.
property.
Yeah.
We'll discuss it.
Yeah, that plan's from 10 years ago.
Yeah,
10 years
I
ago,
think it was 10 years ago.
yeah, so.
But Laura has something that I think we need
Yeah.
to bring up.
So
Yeah,
about
very social.
the social media, so the reason nothing ever happened at council is I was directed or informed that.
Are you talking to the microphone?
Trying to. Oops, this thing's falling off. So the preference by the township is that we would not have full control or administrator rights over a Facebook page. They were sort of suggesting that we just put our posts on the township page. I would like to suggest we still have our own page, although the township wants to be the administrator of it. I don't really know that much about doing the Facebooks, if that would just mean we have to send all the posts their way for review before they get posted, or how exactly the logistics would work. But that was the holdup on not getting us an email address and all that.
One thing I would wonder is, like, usually our natural inclination is always to say, well, if other EACs are doing this, we should just reach out to them. I mean, I would imagine the issues in Lower Saucon Township, the concerns of the township would be similar to the concerns that any other township has had. And then if we just simply contact the EAC people who are managing their website to say, okay, how did you overcome that? And then we might have an idea of how to approach the township and assuage their concerns. I don't know.
I mean, if we want to get going, that's how we could do something quickly or more quickly.
Please.
I think you're gonna find that a lot of it is probably maybe municipality to municipality, depending on how in tune they are. And I certainly understand where they would wanna know who's putting something out under the guise of the umbrella of a
Right.
township committee. I think maybe what we do, you can actually schedule posts ahead of time on
Right.
Facebook. So maybe that becomes something that we put together the plan for the following month, submit it to council ahead of time for approval, so that they can see exactly what's gonna get posted.
I don't know that that was the plan, that council has to
Whoever
approve
wants to
every
see it,
post,
you know what
but
I mean? And
I
then-
guess it wants to be looked at by
Well,
That's
whoever,
understandable.
somebody
I
in
certainly
staff.
understand, but that, whoever wants to see it, we
Right.
can actually outline a calendar, 'cause it's not gonna be something where you don't wanna post every day, because then you become like white
Background noise.
Correct. But I think putting together a calendar, a month or even, if we can, 2 months ahead, get it to whoever does wanna see it, and then, one of us can work with Carol and say, hey, here's what we would like to present. I don't know who would be the person.
good-
Well, Carol, can you give us some insight? I mean,
Yeah, I
things
don't
go on the
know who
township
they had in
website, right?
mind.
So someone's approving
Or the
them.
manager.
What advice can you give us as far as how we should approach this and who would want to have final approval?
Well, I believe this information came from the solicitor,
Okay.
so I
Okay, good, let's give it to him to post.
Yeah, I don't think we need the solicitor to review it either. That seems like over.
No, but
Kill.
the idea of not having a separate EAC email address, that was upon the solicitor's opinion.
And
So-
I think that's, I totally understand that, because I guess you don't know who's sending what, you know what I mean, but just being able to.
So would you make the page using a
It doesn't really
existing
matter
township
who-
email address? I don't.
Honestly, it doesn't really matter what email address, like the township can set it up under whatever they would want it to be, and then we send the post to whoever would be
To share.
on the.
So one way or the other, it seems to me that someone, me as chair, you as a person of the committee of one that's working on this at the
Well,
moment.
Chad was gonna
Okay,
work
Chad,
on
right,
it.
maybe you should just arrange to come down to the township meeting one day and sit down and talk with the interim township manager.
Sure.
And just see what the concerns are
Yeah.
and what what, what working arrangements
I think we'll be able to
possible.
work through it. I think, even presenting a separate page, as long as it was like the township, it's not us as a separate, you know what I mean? I think as long as it became the township seeing it, you know what I mean? And we can just send the ad hoc in photos and even, you can, like I said, you can sit down once and you can schedule posts for the following year if need be.
Yeah, so I would suggest that you do that, Cheyenne, just come down and meet, arrange to meet with the interim township manager, whoever she would think is appropriate, and just have a conversation.
Okay, I can do that.
Here's a plan.
Okay. Do we have a motion to adjourn?
I'll make a motion.
Second.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
I knew that was gonna be a landslide.
That was great.
So I would say this, thanks everyone, it was nice to come to an EAC meeting, and everyone was civil, and,
Productive, finally.
Wow, we got such a long list.
Finally.
I think our township residents appreciated us listening to them.
Have a good night.
Okay, you too, nice to meet you, young man.
Nice to meet you.
So, Carol, these things that are there, Yep, okay, I didn't know if.
And I can ask Jim and Molly and see if we can,
You might have a box.
well, I don't know.
It is a struggle for me to look at PDFs.
Email it to
Like I try to look at it, it's like, then you kind of give up.
don't.
Blowing up, scrolling, blowing up, scrolling. But that's okay, I saw what I needed tonight. Thank you. Yep. Thanks. I mean, because the other side of the other approach is, I could just tell my lab coordinator, we have a supersized plotter. I could give him the PDF and say, John, print me out 3x4s. So I already have the plans in my possession, right? So, okay. Thanks again, everyone.
Came out of the EAC, Kevin, and figure it out. There is.
Oh, there he is.
It was Springfield Village
Okay.
project. I was just
Good
the
night,
liaison
everyone.
from Lower Saucon Township because we have some of their headquarters and they're specifically on my property.
Well, it's not only your property.